Mahabharata. Salutations to Narayana, indeed the greatest among men. Goddess Sarasvati, indeed victory as well. Story 2: The Lunar Dynasty. Kaushika said, "O daughter, you have acted rightly, and by disregarding my consent, you have not violated Dharma, for a marriage like that of the divine Gandharvas conducted in secret, without the appropriate spells between a loving man and a loving woman, is suitable for warriors. King Dasanta is a virtuous man of great spirit and a righteous mind. Thanks to him, you will give birth to a magnificent son named Bharata, possessing immense strength, whose influence will encompass the entire land. Through your son, the all-powerful wheel of the holy Chakravartin will always turn without hindrance." (1) The beginning of the world and the wheel of existence. At the dawn of the universe, when unconsciousness enveloped everything and darkness reigned in every corner, there appeared the great egg, the source of all life and never-ending tales. It was the divine source at the threshold of eternity, and in its heart lay the true light, known as the eternal Brahman. This mysterious and unfathomable source, which both exists and does not exist simultaneously, arranged itself into a perfectly harmonious pattern. From this divine source emerged Brahma, the god of creation, known as the progenitor of the universe, and the mysterious sage Diksha, renowned for the great offerings made to him as tribute. Legend has it that Diksha appeared as an emanation from Brahma's thumb, in the days when the 10 sons of Prasatesa were consumed by the fire of a monsoon storm. From the union of Brahma, his son prophets, Diksha, and his daughters, the first generations of sages, gods, demons, asuras, and rakshasas were born. Among them were also divine musicians, the Gandharvas, enchanting nymphs called apsaras, wild animals, serpent creatures, and avian symphonies. From subsequent generations emerged human society, shaped into 3 castes: warriors, Brahmins, and commoners. This diversity of humanity had its origins in Manu, a demigod whose lineage traced back to the god of the dead Yama, the son of the sun god Vivasvat, who in turn was one of the 8 sons of Diksha's daughter, Aditi, known as the Adithyas. Everything that exists, the entire 3 realms, heaven, earth, and air, revolves in endless cycles of eons. The commencement of a new eon is like the spring season when births bring forth new beings, and its conclusion is like the impending winter when everything rests, converging back into the great egg. The wheel of existence knows neither beginning nor end. It turns like an unceasing cycle of seasons, ceaselessly bringing new beginnings and new endings. In this mystical dance of cosmic time, the universe constantly rediscovers itself anew. 2. The beginnings of the lunar dynasty. King Pururavas. At the very dawn of the universe, in times when darkness veiled the world in a shroud of incomprehension, the lunar dynasty was born, initiated by King Pururavas. His roots trace back to the earliest eon known as the Kritayuga, and he himself was the descendant of Diksha Prajapati, residing in the 7th generation. His birth was extraordinary, for he was born from the 8th son of the demigod Manu, known as Ila. Tales of Ila suggest that both the father and mother of Pururavas were this remarkable being. Pururavas spent some time in the realm of the celestial musicians, the Gandharvas, where love blossomed between him and the beautiful nymph Urvasi. Their union bore 6 sons. Upon returning to earth, Pururavas brought with him 3 sacred fires and became the ruler of 13 islands. His life was a fascinating blend of the divine and the earthly. Although he was a man, he was surrounded by beings whose nature transcended ordinary human understanding. However, intoxicated by his own valor, he desired war with the Brahmins, confiscating their wealth despite their protests. Unfortunately, excessive pride led him into oblivion, and a great prophet, a messenger of Brahma himself, cast a curse upon him. Next, King Nahusha appeared on the scene, the grandson of Pururavas and the father of the future ruler, Yayati. Nahusha was renowned for his wisdom, unwavering righteousness, and love for the truth. As the lord of the land, he held sway over all its inhabitants. He was also an advocate for purifying the earth from the dasas, beings resembling humans but considered enemies by both humans and gods. Eventually, he engaged in a mighty duel with the king of the gods himself, Indra, gaining the upper hand through the fervor he had accumulated through ascetic renunciations, courage, and heroism. In this way, the tale of these monarchs was woven into history, leaving an indelible mark on the pages of time. 3. Brahman Shukra casts a curse on King Yayati. King Yayati, a descendant of the royal line, ruled over a land in a distant era when deities and dark forces, the Asuras, vied with each other in an unending struggle for supremacy over the universe. The outcome of this rivalry largely depended on sacred rituals, leading the deities to appoint Brihaspati, a sage from the Anjurasa lineage, as their priest responsible for presiding over mysterious rites. In contrast, the Asuras, acknowledging the sanctity of their rival, Shukra, a sage from the Briga lineage who possessed the gift of reviving the fallen on the battlefield, decided to make him their priest. His wisdom, stemming from Brahma, aided only the Asuras while closing the door to others. Considering this, the deities turned to Kacha, the eldest son of Brihaspati, with a request to acquire the knowledge hidden in the soul of Brahman Shukra, which was accessible only to the Asuras. They said, "O Kacha, you are still a youth, perhaps you can persuade Brahman Shukra or his daughter Devyani, who is the object of his deep affection. Surely, you will achieve your goal by obtaining this knowledge, accepting Devyani with nobility, grace, charm, and self-discipline." Kacha, young and handsome, undertook the mission from the gods and set out for the city of the Asuras, ready to fulfill their wish. With humility, he stood before the Brahman Shukra, requesting to be accepted as his disciple. When Shukra agreed, Kacha pledged his loyalty while simultaneously making efforts to win the favor of both his teacher and his daughter. The young sage sang, played, and danced before Devyani, who, being a young blossom, joined in the merriment, sharing in the joy together. Some time passed, and while Kacha was tending the cows alone, the Danavas, recognizing him as an emissary of the gods, killed him out of both hatred for the priest Brihaspati and fear of losing the magical knowledge possessed by Brahman Shukra. They cut Kacha's body into tiny pieces smaller than sesame seeds and fed them to wild beasts. When Devyani noticed the cows returning without their shepherd, despair gripped her. Her father tried to console her, saying, "O daughter, do not worry. If Kacha has been killed, I will use my knowledge to bring him back to life." As promised, he did so, and the resurrected Kacha returned from the dead, explaining that he had been killed by the Danavas. In a short time, Kacha went deep into the forest, looking for the flowers that Devyani had asked for. Unfortunately, he once again fell victim to the Danavas, who were more ruthless this time. His body was cruelly murdered and then burned to ashes. These ashes were thrown into a cup of wine and given to the Brahman Shukra. Devyani, impatient due to Kacha's absence, feared that he had once again fallen victim to dark forces. She turned to her father in desperation, pleading with him to bring her beloved sage back to life. However, this time, Shukra felt helpless and explained that he could no longer resurrect the one he had already saved through his magic. He tried to persuade his daughter not to become too attached to the fragile nature of life. Nevertheless, Devyani's despair seemed endless. After much contemplation, Shukra began to suspect that the Danavas, who had killed Kacha, might also seek to deprive him of his role as a priest. He decided to stand up for what is right and oppose evil, knowing that whoever could kill a Brahmin had the power to threaten even Indra, the king of the gods. Once again, he summoned Kacha, who explained that he was now inside his stomach, along with the wine that Shukra had consumed. Upon hearing this, Shukra addressed his daughter, saying, "My dear daughter, reviving Kacha means my own death, as he must leave my stomach." Devyani, overwhelmed with sorrow, replied, "Father, if Kacha does not come back to life, I will never find peace, and after your death, there is no life for me." Shukra understood her suffering and then directed his words to Kacha. "O sage, if your goal was to acquire my knowledge, you have gained it by earning my daughter's friendship. Now, I will reveal to you the secret of resurrection, but on one condition: you must not be Indra in disguise as a Brahmin." Kacha assured Shukra that he was not Indra, and the sage revealed to him the secret of resurrection. In this way, Kacha brought Shukra back to life, exiting his stomach. This tragic incident led Shukra to reflect on the harmful consequences of wine consumption, contributing to its prohibition and the recognition of alcohol as one of the 5 major sins. These 5 sins are killing a Brahmin, drinking alcohol, theft, adultery with a Brahmin's wife, and supporting those who commit these sins. Shukra then addressed the Danavas, proclaiming, "O mighty Danavas, you are strong and powerful, but Kacha, my disciple, has surpassed you by gaining from me the gift of resurrection. Now, his prayerful power, Brahmana, equals your might." After completing all his ascetic duties, the Brahmin Kacha prepared to leave his teacher Shukra's house and return to the realm of the gods. At that moment, Devyani addressed him, saying, "O Brahmin, now that you have completed your rigorous period of asceticism, perform the proper rituals and marry me." However, Kacha declined this proposal, arguing that the law required him to treat her as the daughter of his teacher and a sister, and he could not marry her. Enraged, Devyani cursed him, saying, "O Brahmin, since you reject my love, hiding behind the law, let the knowledge you gained from my father be useless and never find practical application." In response, Kacha said, "O Devyani, I rejected your marriage proposal only because you are the daughter of my teacher. Therefore, you have cursed me even though I committed no wrongdoing. Hence, I curse you in return, and may your fervent desire for marriage to a Brahmin never come true. You shall, as punishment, become the wife of a king. As for your curse, know that although I may not personally use the knowledge I have acquired, I will pass it on to my students, and it will bear fruit for them." After these words, Kacha returned to the realm of the gods, where he was warmly welcomed by the king of the gods, Indra. After receiving the secret of resurrection from Kacha, the gods became pacified, and one day, when they were all gathered together, they spoke to Indra, saying, "O victorious king of excess, the time has come to punish our enemy." Indra replied, "So be it," and left the assembly of gods, heading toward a forest that resembled the Citraratha park. There he saw Devyani, the daughter of Brahmin Shukra, and Sharmishtha, the daughter of the Asura king, frolicking in the water with joy. Indra assumed the form of the wind and with a gusty breeze mixed the clothes left on the shore by both girls. When they emerged from the water, in her haste, Sharmishtha grabbed Devyani's skirt, unaware that the clothes had been swapped. Seeing her skirt on Sharmishtha, Devyani said, "O daughter of a demon, how dare you take my skirt? You are my disciple, and you always humbly listen to your father before mine. You always elevate him and praise him, whereas my father must seek a favor. I am the daughter of the one who gives, not receives, and he is the object of glory, not the praiser. O daughter of a beggar, you stand before me, who possesses power, and you are left defenseless. Find someone who would be your equal, for I do not consider you to be on par with me." Enraged by Devyani's words, Sharmishtha attempted to take her skirt back, but in her anger, she pushed Devyani into a well, believing her to be dead, and quickly made her way to her father's palace. At the same time, King Yayati, after an exhausting deer hunt, felt thirsty and stopped by the well. When he looked inside, instead of water, he saw a beautiful woman, Devyani, with coppery red skin, adorning her nails and hair with precious gems and wearing valuable earrings. Surprised, the king asked, "O beauty, O raven-haired one, tell me who you are and why you sigh so sadly. How did you end up in this well covered with straw? Tell me, who is your father?" Devyani explained that she was the daughter of Brahmin Shukra, who possessed the ability to resurrect demons killed by the gods. She then extended her hand, and King Yayati helped her out of the well before bidding her farewell and returning to his palace. Freed from the well, Devyani immediately sent her maid to Sharmishtha's father, the king of the Asuras, with a request to inform him of the whole incident and announced that she would never set foot in that palace again. When Shukra, Devyani's father, heard the maid's account, he immediately went to the forest to meet with his daughter. He embraced her warmly and said, "O daughter, people reap the fruits of their actions, both good and bad. You must have your reasons for finding yourself in such a situation." Devyani replied with bitterness, "Father, regardless of the reason for my misfortune, Sharmishtha was right in calling you a beggar. I am the daughter of the one who must plead, extend a hand, and flatter others, not the one who receives and is praised." However, Shukra said, "O Devyani, you are not the daughter of a beggar who must beg and flatter. You are the daughter of the one who is praised, not the praiser. My power derives from the incomprehensible Brahmana, prayer, and not only Indra, the king of gods, but also Sharmishta's father, the king of Asuras, and Yayati, the king of humans, are aware of this. Shukra continued, O Devyani, the true victor is one who can remain calm in the face of others' insults. They can control their anger and have the ability to forgive. They are like a charioteer guiding horses or a snake shedding its old skin. Those who do not respond to aggression with aggression but remain humble, offer sacrifices, and do not let anger overcome them, they stand at the highest level. We should not emulate those who succumb to the cycle of unending revenge, for they cannot distinguish their weakness from strength. Devyani, expressing her thoughts, said, Father, although I am still a child, I understand the differences among the various castes inhabiting our land. I also understand what it means to react to insults with dignity and composure. However, I can no longer live in the palace of the Asura king, nor in the company of Sharmishta, the daughter of that king and your disciple. This is not a place for those aspiring to the highest good. I am convinced that the inability to nurture love for others, inherent in some people, leads them down the path of evil. I aspire to something higher, to Sharmishta's teacher, but I can no longer tolerate her disrespect. My place is among those who understand that our differences stem only from our birth. There is nothing worse on this earth than a tongue filled with insults and profanity, as used by Sharmishta. I cannot rejoice in her success when I see how she treats me as a rival. Hearing these words from his daughter, Sukra, the wise Brahmin, decided to go to Vrishaparva, the king of the Asuras, who was the father of Sharmishta. He hoped that, as a Brahmin, he could persuade the king to rectify what was wrong. Sukra said, O king of the Asuras, you must know that all actions that disregard the law and allow evil will sooner or later bring negative consequences. If you do not see these consequences in yourself yet, you will surely understand them when looking at your offspring. You have acted wrongly by ordering the killing of the Brahmin Kacha, who committed no crime and was my student. Furthermore, your daughter Sharmishta has harmed my daughter. Therefore, I declare that I am leaving you and your lineage. Please do not think that I consider you a liar, for I have always known of your righteousness. I am not leaving you to break promises, but because I must protect the honor of my family. The king of the Asuras, being terrified by Brahmin Sukra's words, said, O descendant of Brigu, I have never doubted your righteousness, and I would never call you a liar. I implore you not to leave us, for you are the source of our wisdom and strength. Without you, we would be completely submerged in the ocean of misery. Sukra replied, O king of the Asuras, if you want me to remain in your city, you must appease the anger of my daughter, Durjani. I cannot bear the harm she has suffered. The king of the Asuras, contemplating his decision, turned to Durjani and asked if there was any wish he could fulfill. Durjani wished that Sharmishta, the daughter of the king of the Asuras, should become her handmaiden and accompany her, along with her retinue, to the place where her father would choose a future husband for her. Both the king of the Asuras and Sharmishta agreed to this demand, seeing it as the price for Sukra's continued presence in their city and the knowledge he had bestowed upon them, which would save their lineage from extinction. Durjani was content, knowing that her father's wisdom had helped humble Sharmishta's pride. Sukra returned to the palace of the king of the Asuras, where all the Danavas paid him homage. Then Durjani, accompanied by Sharmishta and her 1,000 attendants, went to the river, to the same forest where once Indra had mixed their clothes. There, amidst a pleasant meal and honeyed drinks, they indulged in pleasure and ecstasy. Just then, the earth's weary king, Jajati, returned from hunting. Seeing Durjani, smiling sweetly, surrounded by joyful servants and the beautiful Sharmishta, who was massaging her feet, he inquired about their names. Durjani explained, I am the daughter of the Asura priest named Sukra, and with me is Sharmishta, the daughter of the Asura king, my slave. The king was surprised and asked, How is it possible that the beautiful daughter of the Asura king is your slave? Durjani replied, O Lord, life holds many surprises. It would be better if you told us your name, especially since you look like a warrior and king but speak like a Brahmin. King Jajati responded, I am the king of the land, but also the king of knowledge, for in my childhood, I gained wisdom from the Vedas. Durjani, recognizing Jajati, who had once helped her escape from the well, said, O king, become my friend and husband. Jajati replied, O daughter of a Brahmin, your father will never accept a king as his son-in-law. The best match for you is a Brahmin of your own status, Durjani said. O royal sage and knower of the Vedas, kingly knowers of the Vedas are like Brahmins who are knowers of the Vedas. Jajati responded, O Durjani, as a king, I am not worthy of a Brahmin's daughter. All castes originate from the same body of the cosmic man, who at the beginning of the world offered himself in sacrifice, but their orders and duties are distinct. In the hierarchy, Brahmins are placed at the highest. Hearing this, the determined Durjani tried a different argument, saying, O king, you must marry me, for you have already taken my hand when you pulled me out of the well. How could a woman as proud as I am think of giving her hand, which has already been taken, to someone else? Jajati said, O daughter of a Brahmin, it is easier to conquer a poisonous cobra or a raging fire than an angered Brahmin, who can destroy kingdoms and their capitals. I cannot take you as my wife for fear of angering your father, the Brahmin. I would only agree to this if your father willingly gave me your hand. Durjani replied, O king, you can be certain of this. My father will certainly give you my hand when he learns that I have chosen you as my husband. And so it happened. When King Jajati expressed his concerns about breaking the law as a king by marrying a Brahmin's daughter, Brahmin Sukra reassured him, saying, O king, do not fear, for I will personally absolve you of this sin. Take my daughter as your wife without hesitation, and find with her indescribable happiness. Also, remember to treat the beautiful daughter of the Asura king, who will accompany her to your home, with respect and never make her your concubine. A delighted Jajati, full of reverence, circled the Brahmin in a proper manner and went with Durjani and her entourage to his palace, which was built to resemble Indra's palace. Durjani resided in the palace chambers for women, while for Samastha and her 1,000 attendants, a house was built among the Ashoka trees. For many years, the king lived with his wife Durjani in a state of ecstatic joy, forgetting the entire world. When Durjani gave birth to her first son named Jadu, Samastha, who had ceased to be a child, began to worry that her newly acquired womanhood would remain unfulfilled. Remembering well how Durjani had convinced King Jajati to become her husband, Samastha decided to follow in her footsteps and also choose the rightful King Jajati as her husband to have sons of her own. One day, Samastha saw the king walking alone in the forest near her home. She went to meet him and, humbly folding her hands, said, O king, who would want to marry me when instead of living in my father's palace, I reside in yours? Therefore, please fulfill your duty, become my husband, and bless me with sons. The king replied, O Samastha, I know your beauty and impeccable manners, but I cannot be your husband because Durjani's father forbids it. I cannot break my promise and turn it into a lie. A king sets an example for his people, and if a king breaks promises, everyone may begin lying, endangering the entire kingdom and its people. When these words reached Samastha's ears, her heart resonated like the strings of the most delicate harp, filled with a burning desire for fidelity to the law. "O my wise king," she spoke, "there is no greater desire in my soul than to abide by the law. But know that sometimes, not fulfilling a promise is not what one calls a lie, and misleading a woman overcome by desire is not a sin. A friend and a husband are two sides of the same coin, and a friend's marriage is as sacred as one's own. You, my king, are my friend's husband, and thus you are also my friend, and your marriage becomes my own. Please, understand this and allow me to become your wife, for I have chosen you as my husband out of love for my friend." King Jajati, hearing these words, felt as if touched by a divine hand upon his heart. "O Samastha," he replied, "you asked me for a favor. How can I refuse a beggar when the law does not allow it? Just tell me what I should do, and your request will be granted." Samastha smiled, her eyes shining like stars in the night sky. "My king," she said, "the law teaches us that a wife, a slave, and a son have no possessions of their own. I am Durjani's slave, and she is your devoted servant. We are both equally dependent on your kindness, and it is your duty to care for our needs." King Jajati, delighted by Samastha's wisdom, agreed to her request and blessed her with 3 sons, giving them the names Druju, Anu, and Puru. When Samastha gave birth to her first son, Durjani, worried, visited her home. Her words sounded like the roar of a mighty ocean. "O beauty of my friend," she began angrily, "what sin have you committed out of love's hunger? Samastha replied calmly, her smile like the morning sun's rays. "Oh, my sweet friend," she said, "I did not yield to desire and passion. My son is a gift from a true sage, a knower of the Vedas, who happened to pass near my home." Dujani wanted to know the sage's name, but Samastha explained that his radiance and power had blinded her, like the sun on the horizon. Dujani smiled and thanked her for the explanation, and the two friends laughed together. Unaware of the truth, Dujani returned to her palace, unaware that she had not learned the whole story and that the sage and knower of the Vedas was her own husband. Soon after, accompanied by King Jajati, Dujani went for a walk towards the forest where Samastha's house was located. There, she saw 3 divine-looking boys, resembling the king, her husband. When she asked them about their father's identity, they all pointed to King Jajati. However, King Jajati, though present, trembled at their sight, fearing Dujani's reaction. He did not greet them in the manner one would expect from a father. Dujani, though unaware of the whole truth, sensed that something was amiss. Addressing Samastha, she said, "O daughter of the Asura king, you have renewed the thread of our understanding, like a river flowing through dry land. But do you not feel shame for what you have concealed?" Samastha replied with humility, "O my sweet friend, I did not deceive you but spoke the truth, that the sun is a gift from the sage and knower of the Vedas, whose heart beats in harmony with the Vedas' sounds. You can be assured that I acted in accordance with the law and propriety. I chose Jajati as my husband, imitating you and treating him with respect as my friend's husband. Now I am your friend as the wife of King Jajati, the knower of the Vedas, and I respect him even more in this role." The truth still lay hidden in their hearts, and the mystery of the past remained concealed, like a treasure buried deep in the earth. Hearing these words, Dujani directed her resentment towards King Jajati, speaking bitter words, "O king, your actions were a mistake that has caused my foot never to set in your palace again." Then, determined, she left King Jajati's kingdom and returned to the land of the Asuras, to her father Sukra. Troubled and in pain, King Jajati followed her, trying unsuccessfully to appease her anger. Together, they stood before the face of the sage Sukra. Dujani spoke her words with conviction, "Father, Adharma unrighteousness has overwhelmed Dharma righteousness, and our world has turned upside down. Samastha, the daughter of the Asura king, triumphed over me and ridiculed me. This King Jajati, supposedly known for his righteousness, confessed to his act, giving Samastha 3 sons while bestowing upon me only 2. This king has crossed the boundaries of decency." Hearing these words, the sage Sukra flared up in anger, revealing his mighty power. He cast a curse upon King Jajati, saying, "O great king, you shall immediately become infirm and deprived of the ability to experience sensual pleasures as punishment for breaking the law, which you yourself knew." Terrified and desperate, King Jajati tried to defend himself, explaining that he acted not out of desire but according to the dictates of the holy scriptures, giving a son to the one who asked for it. Sukra responded firmly. Dujani continued, "O king, hypocrisy in matters of law makes you a criminal. You should turn to me for guidance, for I am your spiritual guide." The curse of the sage Sukra immediately began to take effect, transforming King Jajati into an inept old man. The king was terrified and devastated, realizing that he needed to do something to regain his youth and rid himself of this curse. So he turned to the sage Sukra with a heartfelt plea to mitigate the curse. Sukra did not want to relent from his words but agreed to a certain condition. He said, "O king, if you desire the return of your youth so much and wish to avert this calamity, you must transfer your old age to one of your sons. The son who agrees to accept your old age will receive your kingdom, fame, and progeny. When you bestow your old age upon him, you shall regain your youth." King Jajati, though horrified at the prospect of losing his youth, agreed to fulfill the sage Sukra's condition. He pledged that he would do so. 4. Kuru, the son of King Jajati, inherits the kingdom. From King Jajati's marriage to Dujani, 2 sons were born, Jadu and Turwasu. Additionally, from his union with the beautiful Samastha, 3 sons were born, Druju, Anu, and Puru. When Jajati suddenly and prematurely began to feel old and lost his former vitality due to the curse he had incurred, he turned to his sons with a fervent request. He had an immense desire to once again experience the joy of being with a young and beautiful woman, a pleasure that the curse had deprived him of. So, he asked his sons if any of them would agree to exchange bodies with him. In return, he promised that after 1,000 years, he would return their young bodies to them and make one of them his successor to the throne. When the older sons refused to fulfill this extraordinary request, the king imposed various curses upon them. Jadu, the eldest son and the natural heir to the throne, was cursed so that his descendants would never become kings. Turwasu, the second son, suffered a similar fate, with the curse prophesying that his descendants would not continue the royal lineage. Druju, the third son, heard a curse that foretold that his dreams of becoming a ruler in the western lands would never come true. Anu, the fourth brother, also could not escape the curse, and his descendants were destined to become barbarians. However, only the youngest son, Puru, agreed to the sacrifice, offering his young body to his father. At that moment, King Jajati, through his ascetic practices, transferred his years of old age onto Puru, regaining his youth for 1,000 years. During this time, Puru, guided by the principles of the law, ruled the kingdom like an incarnation of Indra himself. He offered to the gods and ancestors, fulfilled the requests of the oppressed, generously bestowed upon virtuous Brahmins, welcomed guests with bread and water, and lovingly cared for the poor and those fighting against Dasjas, enemies of the gods. Eventually, when King Jajati had enjoyed various pleasures and felt weary, he fulfilled his promise by returning Puru's youth and transferring the royal power to him. He said, "My youngest son, though you are the last in line, it is you who will be my heir, and your descendants will be known as Pauravas, named after you. I entrust to you the heart of the kingdom, leaving the outskirts for your brothers. However, remember that true virtue lies in controlling anger, being ready to forgive, and avoiding pride. Even though you may be surrounded by curses, do not respond in kind. Do not inflict pain, use force, or wound with words. Choose the path of goodness. In all three worlds, the best way to make friends is through compassion, goodwill toward all beings, generosity, and kind words." Although the coronation of the youngest son seemed to contradict the rules of succession, King Jajati explained to the Brahmins and his people the reasons behind his decision. He clarified that he had acted in accordance with the instructions of the Brahmin Sukra to make his son, who had agreed to such an extraordinary sacrifice by temporarily giving up his youthful body, his successor. This explanation satisfied all those present. After transferring the royal power to his youngest son, King Jajati went to the forest to spend the rest of his life as a hermit, surrounded by Brahmins. He sustained himself solely on fruits and roots found in the forest, accumulating the merits necessary to attain heaven. Through steadfast practice and control of his mind and speech, he gained access to heavenly realms where he enjoyed a long period of blissful ecstasy, receiving homage from 30 gods. He then moved on to the world of Brahma, where he also spent some time. However, the time came when his heavenly stay reached its end because his accumulated merits were depleted. It became evident when he encountered Indra, who asked if he knew anyone as steadfast in austerity as he himself practiced after leaving his kingdom. Jajati, perhaps overly confident, replied with pride, "O Indra, among the gods, great sages, divine musicians called Gandharvas, and humans, you will not find anyone as strong in religious fervor as I am." Upon hearing this, Indra said, "O king, your words filled with arrogance express contempt for those at your level, those above you, and those below you. In this way, you have depleted the merits accumulated through your virtuous life. You must now be reborn on earth among righteous people so that you can quickly regain your lost moral values." Jajati replied, "So be it." As the legend goes, in his new incarnation, King Jajati was so virtuous that in his kingdom, no one died. The gods had to implore Yama, the god of death, to restore death to the people and relieve the earth of the burden of an unsustainable population. 5. The birth of King Bharata. King Dushintha, the son of the illustrious King Kuru from the Lunar Dynasty and the grandson of King Jahati, was a match for the gods themselves in the art of wielding weapons. He was incredibly strong, capable of lifting even Mount Mandara. However, his power was not only physical, he was also a just and virtuous king. Under his rule, the castes lived harmoniously, and people adhered to the principles of order and mutual benefit. His devotion to the gods was not driven by personal gain but by deep reverence for the law. Under his reign, no one suffered from diseases, hunger, or thieves. His subjects had unwavering faith in him, considering him the guardian of the land, which allowed them to sleep peacefully in the face of any threat. Even Indra blessed the land with timely rains, leading to abundance and prosperity. One day, this brave king, fully armed, led a grand hunting expedition deep into the wild jungle. His entourage, consisting of thousands of armed warriors, created melodic thunder in the background, resonating in the air. As King Dushyantha extolled his royal might, women from palace windows they passed by gazed at him in admiration, seeing in him the incarnation of Lord Indra, the Lord of Thunder. This ruler of the land, who marched to the rhythm of his chariot, resembling Garuda in his majestic flight, ventured into the wilderness that appeared like Indra's paradise. Although the forest was severe and devoid of water, it abounded with wild game. Large herds of deer roamed there, while predators lurked among them. Determined in his pursuit, King Dushyantha began hunting, shooting arrows and fighting with animals using his sword. His warriors also left no survivors among the wild beasts, turning the hunting grounds into ruins and chaos. The deer cried out for help, and herds of thirsty elephants embarked on chaotic marches. However, the king, determined and hungry, paid no heed to the destruction, continuing the hunt. As hunger and thirst tormented him, King Dushyantha and his warriors ventured deeper into the wild jungle, reaching a different place of heavenly beauty. Despite his physical fatigue, the king continued to radiate extraordinary energy when he saw the tranquil hermitage of holy ascetics. He almost forgot his hunger and thirst amid the idyllic scenery. He discarded the symbols of his royal authority, and, accompanied only by his wise counselor and devoted priest, proceeded further. As he crossed the hermitage's gates, he was overwhelmed by the sight that greeted him. The hermitage was like a place from dreams, where every element of nature lived in perfect harmony. Flames from the sacrificial fire burned brightly, surrounding the ascetic's place of worship. Flower carpets adorned the surroundings, and flocks of birds and wild animals coexisted peacefully. A multitude of ascetics and hermits had gathered there. Observing this, the ruler of men, King Dushyantha, wished to meet the great ascetic Kashyapa, a descendant of Lord Brahma himself. He turned to his escort, who had accompanied him on this journey, and said, "O warriors, stay here at the gate and await my return. I wish to visit Kashyapa, the ascetic devoid of body and senses." He then crossed the gate, forgetting his hunger and thirst, fully absorbed in the magic of this extraordinary place. He abandoned the signs of his royal dignity and proceeded forward, accompanied only by his wise counselor and loyal priest. In the hermitage, like in a magical mirror, reflected the world of Brahma, where the buzzing of bees and the songs of predatory birds created echoes. Versatile recitations of Rigveda hymns flowed from the lips of the noblest Brahmins, forming a mystical harmony. The hermitage, illuminated by the radiance of the unwavering ascetic priests practicing their religion rigorously, was a place where knowledge blossomed in the rays of divine wisdom. Atharvavedic scholars, surrounded by officiants, recited Samhita hymns. In the air, the sound of the exquisite language of the Brahmins hung, experts in the rites and mysteries of various kinds of offerings, people who had mastered the art of sacred phonetics and text interpretation, experts in the Vedas, skilled in the intricate weaving of various types of sentences, scholars in various rites focused on salvation and the law. Through their practice of argumentation, negation, and inference, they had acquired knowledge of the ultimate truth. King Dushyantha, the incredible conqueror, saw these outstanding Brahmins around him, practicing self-discipline through strict vows, intoning magical incantations, making offerings, and performing rituals in temples dedicated to various deities. When he entered this world of Brahma, surrounded by the constant religious practices of the sage Kashyapa, King Dushyantha was even more enraptured. Having dismissed his advisor and priest, King Dushyantha continued alone towards the holy sanctuary of Kasyapa, surrounded by the chanting of the prophet's prayers. However, the sage Kasyapa was not in the hermitage at that time, and to welcome him, a young girl dressed as an ascetic emerged. She was as beautiful as the goddess of abundance, and was named Shakuntala. Her presence was to complete all the greetings for the guest. Shakuntala, standing before the enthralled king, told him that her father, Kasyapa, had gone into the jungle. Shakuntala narrated to the king a story she had overheard one day, eavesdropping on a conversation between Kasyapa and a sage. Her biological father was King Vishvamitra, who had dedicated himself to such severe ascetic practices that he became a rival to Lord Indra, the king of the gods. Indra, fearing that Vishvamitra's spiritual practices might dethrone him, decided to break Vishvamitra's asceticism by sending a beautiful and charming nymph named Menaka. Indra said, "O Menaka, you are the most beautiful of all nymphs. Take on my task." This great ascetic Vishvamitra has tormented himself to such an extent that I tremble in fear. Entice him with your beauty, sweetness, and youth, thus interrupting his penance. Menaka replied, "O Indra, this venerable Vishvamitra has gathered so much strength through his asceticism that I tremble before him. If even you, the king of gods, are afraid of him, how can I, a weak woman, not fear his wrath? His power is immense. Although he was born a warrior and was a king, by his free will, he has become a sage and has triumphed over the mighty sage Vasishta. He created the holy river Kausiki. He conducted the sacrifice ordered by King Mithanga, for which even you came in fear to drink the soma. By his austerities, he created a new galaxy. How can I not fear such a man? How can a weak woman like me overcome a man of such spiritual power, burning like fire, mastering his senses? His lips are like a blazing hearth. The pupils of his eyes shine like the sun and the moon, and his tongue is like the blade of time, destroying everything. How can I defeat him? O Indra, since you have given me the command to seduce this man through my charms, I must obey you. I only request your protection and that the wind may scatter my robes when I appear before Vishvamitra, while Kamadeva, the god of love, releases his love arrow at the right time." Indra replied, "So be it," and ordered the wind to accompany Menaka and assist her wherever Vishvamitra was practicing his asceticism, even though his spiritual practice had long purified him of all impurities. When Vishvamitra saw the beautiful nymph in flowing robes, he felt a desire he could not resist, forgetting his asceticism. As a result of these events, Menaka gave birth to a daughter, Shakuntala, and abandoned her as an infant on the banks of the Malini River before returning to the heavens, where she usually resided. The abandoned child, protected from wild animals by the care of birds, was found by the sage Kasyapa, who saved her life, feeding and nurturing her as his own daughter in accordance with the law, thus becoming her father. Listening to Shakuntala's story, King Dizanta turned to her with affection. "O beautiful Shakuntala! Although you were raised by the Brahmin Kasyapa, you are the offspring of King Vishvamitra, who became a Brahmin through his immense self-control. And as a king's daughter, you could become my queen. I earnestly request you to accept my proposal. Today itself, I will bring you golden ornaments, and you will share the kingdom with me. Become my wife, like the Gandharv couples who soar through the skies because their marriage rituals are best suited for kings and warriors." Shakuntala, initially somewhat shy, requested the king to wait for Kasyapa's return, who should decide her future. However, the passionate King Dizanta convinced her that a Gandharv-style marriage was appropriate in this situation. "I am in love with you, and you with me. Please become my wife immediately," following the Gandharv practice. Shakuntala agreed but laid down a condition. "O king, I am ready to become your wife on the condition that the son born of our union will be the heir to the throne." The king agreed to this request and promised to send an entourage to fetch her from Kasyapa's hermitage and take her to the royal palace. This is how their son, named Bharata, was born. Leaving Shakuntala and returning to Hastinapura, King Duzanta worried about what the sage Kasyapa would think of the entire situation upon his return to the hermitage. Would he perhaps be furious and curse him for what had happened? When the sage Kasyapa, possessing knowledge of everything, returned to his hermitage, Shakuntala greeted him in silence, for she was too embarrassed. Kasyapa said, "Daughter, you acted correctly, not breaking the law. A Gandharv-style marriage, solemnized secretly without proper rituals, between a loving man and a loving woman, is suitable for warriors. King Dizanta is a good man with a great spirit and a righteous heart. Through him, you will give birth to a magnificent son of immense power, whose influence will encompass the entire earth. Thanks to this son, the wheel of the holy craftsman will always turn freely." Shakuntala requested that Kasyapa bless the king and his advisors. Kasyapa replied, "So be it. Just tell me what your specific wish is." Shakuntala replied, "Father, I desire that the lunar dynasty, stemming from the Pura lineage in which my husband and son are kings, never deviates from the path of righteousness, and never loses its kingdom. Kasyapa promised, "O daughter, so shall it be." However, despite the promise, 3 years passed, and King Dusanta, failing to send for Shakuntala, who had by then given birth to a son as powerful as a lion, bearing the mark of a wheel on his hand, abundantly endowed with virtues of beauty and generosity bestowed by nature, and having received all the due sacraments from Kasyapa, he was growing up quickly and without hindrance. The boy, looking like a young god, especially became famous for his ability to tame wild animals. Kasyapa, observing his extraordinary abilities, said to his daughter, "O daughter, it is time for your son to become king," and requested his disciples to take Shakuntala, equipped with all the signs of a virtuous wife, and her son of great strength, to Hastinapura, to her husband King Dusanta. Standing before the king's presence, Shakuntala, dressed in modest ascetic attire, said, "O king, before you stands your own son, similar to the gods. According to your promise, name him the heir to the throne." Although the king remembered his promise well, he denied knowing Shakuntala, let alone her son. The king's words deeply wounded Shakuntala, enveloping her in boundless shame and suffering. She struggled to hold back the gaze that, due to the heat accumulated from her ascetic life, could have consumed him in an instant. After regaining her composure somewhat, she spoke with great anger. "O king, you know very well that I speak the truth, and you lie like a common man. You insult yourself. You know very well that by lying, you rob your own soul. You think you are the master of your own self and forget about the ancient prophet who lives in your heart and bears witness to all your evil deeds. It is before him that you lie. The gods also know when a man commits a wicked act. Do not underestimate me, for I am your faithful wife, and I came to you of my own free will. Instead of welcoming me with due gifts, you treat me as if I were inferior. If you do not grant my request, your head will shatter into 100 pieces. A wife is an omen of good fortune. Through her, a man is born again in the form of a son who, in turn, saves his father from hell, continuing his lineage and paying due respects to the ancestors. A son is a reflection of the father, begotten from him, and therefore, he should take care of the mother of his son as he would of his own mother. He is like a mirror in which he looks to find boundless joy that he experiences only through his wife. A wife means more than a friend, for she is a friend to the husband in the hour of death. She is the roots from which law, gain, and love sprout. A man who has a wife is more trustworthy, for he can perform the prescribed rituals, has a domestic hearth, and is happy. Therefore, keeping in mind both the worldly life and the eternal life, a man desires marriage. The possession of a wife not only brings him joy but also love and merits that he collects. A woman is the sacred field for a man's progeny, and even prophets cannot have sons without them. How can you reject the joy of embracing your own son? For 3 years I carried him beneath my heart to dispel your sorrow. And when he was born, a voice from heaven proclaimed, "O Shakuntala, your son has performed hundreds of sacrifices. O king, who knows the law, how can you reject your son, who gazes at you with love?" Hearing this, King Dushyanta replied, "O Shakuntala, how can I be certain that this child is indeed my son? He appears too big and strong for such a young age. Women are known to deceive, and I have no reason to believe your words. Your mother, the Apsara Menaka, was a heartless seductress who abandoned you in the Himalayas like a discarded garland. Your father, Vishvamitra, a born king, became a Brahmin and was known for his licentious ways. Your lineage is humble, and I suspect you might be a seductress in ascetic disguise. Return to where you came from, for I want nothing to do with you." Shakuntala retorted, "O king, my lineage is superior to yours. My mother, Menaka, is one of the 30 divine nymphs, and while you walk the earth, I move through the skies. You speak falsely, but truth is the supreme law, and falsehood is the greatest evil on earth. Truth is the highest Brahman and the sovereign duty. Do not neglect the duty you undertook, for truth is your greatest ally. But if you insist on falsehood, I want nothing to do with you, and I prefer to return to my hermitage. Regardless of whether you acknowledge your son or not, he will still become the ruler of the land." After saying this, Shakuntala prepared to leave the royal palace and her husband, King Dushyanta, who sat among his priests, advisors, teachers, and chaplain. Suddenly, like thunder from a clear sky, a divine voice spoke. O king, descendant of Kuru, cherish your son, do not reject Shakuntala, for she speaks the truth. Embrace your son, make him your successor, and name him Bharata. Upon hearing this divine voice, King Dushyanta turned to his chaplain and advisors, saying, O noble men, heed the words of this divine summons. I always knew that Shakuntala spoke the truth, and Bharata is my son. However, to dispel any doubts, I awaited divine confirmation to announce it publicly. Understood and justified before his subjects by the divine message, the king was filled with happiness and love. He embraced his son, kissing his forehead affectionately, while his subjects, priests, and poets sang songs in honor of the new heir. With utmost respect for his wife, he explained to Shakuntala, O my beloved, people were unaware of our agreement, which is why I behaved differently. I hope that the gods would eventually clarify our true situation and confirm Bharata's heritage. Following this, King Dushyanta formally named his son Bharata and officially appointed him as his successor to the throne. From that moment on, the famous wheel, a symbol of Bharata's spiritual realm, turned with a resounding cry throughout many worlds, marking the beginning of the renowned Bharata dynasty that ruled the Kuru people. King Bharata, the majestic ruler of the land, conquered other kings and made them his allies. He lived according to the law, earning fame and respect. His sacrifices resembled those offered by gods. Through the great sages Diksha and Kashyapa, and during the horse sacrifice ceremony, he gifted Kashyapa with 1,000 cows. The described texts from the Mahabharata, concerning the lunar dynasty, provide us with several important conclusions. The story of Shakuntala is a tale of love, mysteries, and curses, known from the Hindu epic Mahabharata, authored by Vyasa. The described events constitute only a part of this epic saga, which is one of the most significant texts in Hinduism. Shakuntala, the daughter of King Vishvamitra and the celestial nymph Menaka, was found as a baby in the forest by the sage Kashyapa and raised by him as his own daughter. Kashyapa is an eminent ascetic and expert in religious practices, and his character is known from various Hindu texts. The main focus of the story revolves around the love between Shakuntala and King Dushyanta, who meets her in the forest and falls in love with her. The king proposes marriage, and she agrees on the condition that their son will be his successor to the throne. However, after some time, the king forgets this promise and refuses to acknowledge Shakuntala and her son. The conflict between Shakuntala and the king is the central point of the story. Shakuntala is the embodiment of truth and serves as a reminder to the king of his duties and morality. Her words are filled with anger and disappointment, but also with strength of character and righteousness. The story of Shakuntala is rich in symbolism and references to Indian beliefs and values, such as the role of truth, loyalty, love, and heritage. It is a tale of justice and the consequences of forgetting promises and commitments. Similar to many other ancient Hindu epics, the story of Shakuntala prompts deep reflections on human nature, morality, human relationships, and the role of truth and law in society. First conclusion: the force of fate and divine intervention. The texts illustrate that fate and divine intervention play a crucial role in the lives of characters like Shakuntala, Dushyanta, and Bharata. These events were shaped by higher forces, emphasizing the existence of spirit and divine order in the Hindu conception of the world. Second conclusion: the importance of honesty and truth. Shakuntala adhered to the principle of truth, despite misunderstandings with King Dushyanta. The texts underscore that honesty and truth are valuable virtues in Hinduism that should be upheld even in the face of difficulties. Third conclusion: family and heritage. The stories presented highlight the immense significance of family and heritage. Bharata, as the son of Dushyanta and Shakuntala, had a right to the throne, which sparked a conflict ultimately resolved through divine intervention. Family and heritage were central aspects of life in those times, carrying great societal and spiritual importance. Fourth conclusion: the value of sacrifice and generosity. Inspired by the spirit of sacrifice, King Bharata bestowed thousands of cows upon Kashyapa. This emphasizes the significance of generosity and sacrifice in Hindu culture, which are essential aspects of spirituality and morality. Fifth conclusion: social and cultural transformations. These texts shed light on the evolution of Hindu society and culture, from the traditions of the Brahmins to the practices of warriors. These changes reflect the complexity and diversity of society and customs in ancient India. These conclusions highlight that the stories from the Mahabharata not only convey history and mythology but also offer deeper reflections on moral values, the spirit of human destiny, and the connections between individuals and divinity.